My name is Patricia Lane, and I was only 12 years old when everything in my life turned upside down. That morning started like any other day. Dad kissed my forehead, smiled gently, and left the house to head to the construction site. He was a site supervisor for a civil construction company in Oregon. I still clearly remember the denim jacket he wore and how he said, "I'll bring home your favorite pastry this afternoon." That was the last thing I ever heard from him. Mom didn't even look up when Dad walked out the door. Her eyes were glued to her phone, fingers scrawling endlessly like she was drowning in an infinite stream of news. That struck me as odd. They used to talk every morning, exchange warm glances. Lately, the silence between them had stretched longer, like a void I couldn't fill. By noon, while I was sitting in science class, the principal walked in. Her face was serious, but her eyes held a deep sympathy. I was called outside, not knowing what was happening. In the principal's office, my mom was already there. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup untouched, and her cold eyes looked at me like I was a stranger. "Your father is gone, Patricia," she said in a disturbingly calm voice. I froze. It felt like the air around me had disappeared. I screamed on the inside, but on the outside, all I could do was cry, choked and silent. Mom placed her hand lightly on my shoulder, patting it as if she were comforting an acquaintance, not the only daughter who had just lost her father. That night, I went up to my room early but couldn't sleep. I heard Mom on the phone downstairs. Her voice was low, but every word came through the thin walls of our house. "Actually, this might be a good opportunity," she said, pausing for a moment. "Being a widow is better than being divorced. At least I get to keep everything without sharing with lawyers." Then she laughed, a short, sharp laugh like a knife's edge. I couldn't believe my ears. My father had only been gone for a few hours, and yet my mother, the woman who had held his hand through years of marriage, was saying such things without an ounce of sorrow, without a single real tear. I sat on the stairs, my hand covering my mouth to stifle the sobs, my heart aching as if it were being crushed. The only one who sensed the truth was Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister. She didn't sob loudly at the funeral, didn't offer hollow condolences like the others. She just stood quietly in the backyard, shaking her head gently whenever someone hugged my mom and said, "Poor thing." Aunt Margaret had known all along. She'd seen how Mom treated Dad, the disdain in her words when he lost his job temporarily, the irritated glances when he came home late after overtime shifts. But no one wanted to believe it. My mother always appeared polished, knew just the right words to say to fool people. Only Aunt Margaret and I saw how everything was falling apart beneath the surface. After the funeral, Mom transformed. No longer tired or sorrowful, no more red eyes. She dressed more extravagantly, wore heavier makeup, and was constantly on the phone. I once caught her tearing up a family photo with Dad in it, then tossing it into the trash without a second thought. That time, I didn't cry. I just stood there, eyes dry, because even my tears seemed to understand there was no place left for them. I had lost the person I loved most, but what hurt more was realizing I never really had a mother. 4 months after the funeral, Mom casually announced she was remarrying. She didn't sit me down or ask how I felt. She stood in the kitchen, stirring her morning coffee, and said it as if she were announcing the weather. "Patricia, Daniel and I are getting married at the end of the month." I froze in place. The spoon in my hand dropped to the floor with a cold clang. Daniel Morrison, the man who had shown up at our house a few times after Dad passed. At first, he just came by to help Mom cope with her grief, but over time, he appeared more frequently, even bringing his 2 kids, Chase, 14, and Kayla, 11. Chase always looked at me like I was from another planet, while Kayla rarely spoke, just quietly assessed me head to toe whenever her mom signaled her. I used to think I was imagining it. I wasn't. The wedding was a private ceremony in a small garden outside Boise, Idaho. I had no role in the event, wasn't asked about the dress, seating, or even if I wanted to go. Mom simply handed me a pale pink dress, and coldly said, "Don't embarrass me." After the honeymoon, Daniel and his kids moved into my house, or rather, the house that used to belong to my dad. That's when everything changed, in ways I couldn't have imagined. Kayla was given my bedroom because, as Mom put it, she's a girl and she needs space to paint. I was moved to the attic, a cramped room with rough wooden walls and a single window that was jammed shut. Chase took over my dad's study, once filled with books and sketches. It became his game room. I protested, gently. Mom responded curtly, "You need to learn to share. The world doesn't revolve around you." Every night, dinner felt like a stage play where I was just an extra. Mom filled Kayla's plate, saved the last piece of chicken for Chase while I quietly ate cold salad. When I asked, "May I have some more potatoes?" she shrugged. "You've had enough." Weekend trips began. Camping, canoeing, national park visits. I was never invited. Mom explained, "You're not into outdoor activities. Stay home and watch the cat." So I stayed, with Ginger the cat, and the growing feeling of being left behind. I called Aunt Margaret more often. Nights at her house felt like breathing again. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me a warm blanket, a cup of hot cocoa, and listened in silence. Once, while I was stacking clothes in her room, she asked softly, "Are you okay with how things are at home?" I didn't know what to say. Some truths, once spoken, hurt more than when kept inside. I just bowed my head and mumbled, "At least, I have a real bedroom here." She squeezed my hand. Her eyes held no anger, no pity, just a deep understanding that made me want to cry. One Friday afternoon, I came home from school and saw Mom and Kayla sitting together in the living room. The table was covered with markers and drawing paper. They were laughing. Mom gently untangled Kayla's hair from her sweater, smiling like I didn't even exist. That image froze me at the doorway, my chest hollow. "Patricia, walk softer," Mom snapped. "Kayla needs to concentrate." I turned away and quietly climbed the stairs to the sweltering attic. No lock on the door, no one to check on me. Just me and the wind whistling through the jammed window. That night, I pulled out a small notebook and wrote my first line. "I will not be forgotten. Not like this." I started thinking about college when I turned 17. Late afternoons in the school library, I sat alone researching business schools, scholarship programs, and dreaming of a life I could finally control. A life where I wouldn't be shoved into attics or called the extra problem, in a family I never chose. One evening, while Mom was baking for Kayla's upcoming birthday party, I gathered my courage and stepped into the kitchen. The scent of butter and vanilla lingered in the air, clashing with the heaviness in my chest. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "I want to apply to the University of Minnesota. They have a great business program and I've almost finished my application." She stopped, turned to look at me, not with surprise or emotion, but with visible irritation. "Patricia, where do you think the money for college is going to come from?" She set the cake pan on the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. "Chase is starting senior year, Kayla's got real artistic talent, and I'm planning to enroll her in an art academy out of state. You need to be realistic." I bit my lip. "What about Dad's savings?" I remember he once said. Mom frowned and cut me off with a sigh. "Are you still stuck on that? Your father didn't leave anything. Whatever was in the savings account was used for hospital bills, the funeral, and living expenses all these years. Did you think food, clothes, and a roof over your head were free?" I stood frozen, not because of her answer, but because of how she said it. As if my very existence was a burden. Still, I didn't give up. That weekend, I went to Aunt Margaret's house as usual. She made peppermint tea and the cookies still smelled fresh from the oven. We sat on the porch swing where the late afternoon sunlight stretched across the lawn like a soft blanket. I told her everything, about the conversation with Mom, about my dream of going to college, and the lingering doubt I had about the money Dad once said was set aside for me. Aunt Margaret stayed silent for a moment, then stood up and went inside. I waited, clutching my now cold teacup. When she came back, she held a small old metal box, secured with a tiny latch. "I've been keeping this for 5 years," she said, her voice low but warm. "Before your father passed, he came to see me. He was worried. He said things were changing at home and he didn't want to take any risks." My eyes widened as she handed me the box. Inside was a thick envelope, sealed tightly with tape. My hands trembled as I opened it. A bank statement fell out, and my heart pounded. Over $72,000 in the account. The beneficiary, me. The assigned trustee, Margaret Lane. "Your dad had been putting money into that account for years," Aunt Margaret said, looking at me with love. "He didn't say why exactly, but when I heard he passed and saw how things changed with your mom, I knew why he did it." I was speechless, tears threatening to spill. Part of me wanted to break down, but another part felt a surge of strength. Dad hadn't abandoned me. Even when he was gone, he was still protecting me in the quietest way. "Don't tell your mother," Aunt Margaret warned, her voice firm. "If she finds out, she'll find a way to take it. From now on, you have to keep this completely secret." I nodded. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a luxury. That night, I sat by Aunt Margaret's window, moonlight reflecting off the bank document in my hands. Those cold numbers now held the deepest kind of love. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing for sure. I would fight for my future, and I would never let anyone, not even my mother, take that from me again. I kept the money a secret, just as Aunt Margaret told me to. During my senior year, I poured everything into school. Every morning, I woke up earlier than my alarm, did extra assignments, applied for scholarships, and practiced writing essays like my life depended on every word. In truth, it did. At school, Chase still made sarcastic remarks when I brought packed lunches or wore the same old jacket. "Don't worry, Patricia," he once sneered. "They still need cashiers." Kayla frequently posted pictures of the happy family online, pictures I was never in. I stayed silent, as always, because I knew I was preparing for something far greater than anything they could ever imagine. That spring, when I turned 18, I received my acceptance letter from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, majoring in business administration. I also earned a partial scholarship thanks to my grades and an essay about my determination to build a life on my own terms. I didn't show the acceptance letter to my mom. Instead, I quietly planned my departure, with Aunt Margaret's help and the money my dad had saved for me. 3 months later, I left the house where I had lived like a shadow. No farewell party, no hug. Mom just asked flatly, "Are you sure you can handle living on your own?" I smiled, nodded, and walked out the door, feeling as though I had just removed a weight I'd carried for years. College life wasn't easy, but I loved every moment of independence. I worked at a cafe near the dorms, joined academic clubs, and never passed up an internship opportunity. That's where I met Jessica Ward, a classmate whose personality was the opposite of mine. Bold, energetic, but incredibly kind. One time, while working on a marketing strategy project together, Jessica invited me to her house to prepare our presentation. I didn't expect the house to be a 3-story mansion in suburban Madison, and I certainly didn't expect her father to be Malcolm Ward, CEO of a well-known marketing firm called Ward & Cole Strategies. After our rehearsal, Mr. Ward overheard us practicing. He stepped into the room, nodded approvingly, and asked me a few questions about my market analysis. He didn't say much then, but a week later, Jessica handed me his business card and said, "My dad wants to meet you. I think he's looking for interns." That summer, I started my internship at Ward & Cole. At first, I handled small tasks, compiling data, assisting with events, making coffee. But I observed, learned, and stayed late whenever I could. When a senior employee suddenly left, I volunteered to finish her unfinished market report. That report caught Mr. Ward's attention. After graduation, I was offered a full-time position. I began as a market analyst. 4 years later, I became regional strategy lead. By year 6, I was promoted to Director of Strategic Development. At just 24 years old, every step was deliberate, each small win a brick laid in the foundation of my new life. I bought my first apartment in downtown Milwaukee. I picked out the furnishings myself. Minimalist, elegant, and nothing excessive. Then came the Mercedes-Benz GLC, a reward I gave myself after exceeding performance goals. But unlike Kayla or Chase, I didn't post photos for attention. I didn't need to. I only shared a few pictures with Aunt Margaret, the only one who knew my entire journey. She always replied, "Your father would be so proud." And I never once doubted you'd make it. I still keep a journal. Whenever I feel tired or uncertain, I open the old notebook, where Dad's handwriting is on the first page. No matter where you go, I believe you'll get to where you dream to be. Now, I'm there. The very place I once dreamed of, doubted, and fought to reach. I never returned to the old house. I hadn't heard a word from Mom, Chase, or Kayla in 6 years. Until one June morning when a strange message appeared in my voicemail, with a voice I couldn't mistake. "Patricia, it's Mom. I have something I want to talk to you about." The message came at 7 a.m., on the same day I was promoted to Regional Vice President at Ward & Cole. As I sipped my coffee on the balcony, watching Milwaukee awaken below, my phone buzzed with a simple notification. "Patricia, I'm having my 55th birthday party at Belle Rive Restaurant, Saturday, 7 p.m. You should be there. Don't make people think I didn't raise you right." No warm greeting, no explanation, just a cold demand. Exactly how she used to control my life when I was a child. Even the way she wrote, "You should be there," made me laugh. Like nothing had happened all those years, like I was still stuck in the attic eating dinner alone. I planned to delete the message, but part of me, not to forgive, but to prove something, wanted to see the look on her face when she realized the daughter she once abandoned had grown up. That afternoon, I sat with Aunt Margaret in the living room, recounting the message with a smirk. She set her teacup down, watching me for a long moment. "Are you going to go?" I nodded. I don't want anything from her, but I think it's time she saw the truth she's been denying all these years. Aunt Margaret raised an eyebrow. "So, what are you going to give her?" I opened my phone and showed Aunt Margaret a confirmation email. A 3-month luxury vacation at a 6-star resort in Iceland, first-class tickets, full-service package. Total cost, $180,000. Aunt Margaret nearly dropped her glasses. "Goodness, Patricia!" I gave a soft smile. She'll never receive this trip. But I just want to see her reaction. Just once. On Saturday evening, I chose a simple black dress from a brand most people unfamiliar with fashion would mistake for something cheap. I took a taxi to Belle Rive, a fancy-looking restaurant, but I knew the truth. The food was average at best, and the price was inflated by chandeliers and background violin music. The private dining room was decorated with candles and elegant fake flowers. My mother sat in the center, her sequin dress sparkling, makeup flawless down to every detail. Next to her was Daniel, still as dull as ever. Chase and Kayla flanked them, beaming in designer outfits, acting like movie stars. When she saw me, Mom narrowed her eyes, then forced a social smile. "Oh, Patricia, you showed up on time. At least you still remember your manners." I didn't respond. I just smiled and walked toward an empty seat at the end of the table. The party unfolded like a stage play. Relatives gave ordinary gifts, which my mother praised like they were treasures. A scarf, a cosmetic set, a shopping voucher. Then it was Chase and Kayla's turn. They stood hand in hand, confidently presenting their gift like they were delivering a graduation speech. "Mom," Chase began, "Kayla and I saved up all year to get you something really special." Kayla held up her phone, showing a picture of a brand new massage chair already set up in the living room. Mom clutched her chest and feigned being overwhelmed. "Oh my, you two are the most thoughtful children in the world." Then her gaze drifted toward me. "And what about you, Patricia?" I'm not expecting much, maybe a card or a handkerchief. I calmly opened my handbag, took out a small blue box neatly wrapped with a white ribbon. I pushed it toward her. Just open it and see. She took the box and glanced at it like she was judging a last-minute bargain bin item. When she opened it and saw the slip of paper inside, she frowned. What is this? I sat up straight. A reservation confirmation for Aurora Blue Resort in Iceland. 3 weeks, full-service package, first-class tickets. That's my birthday gift to you. The room fell silent. Kayla dropped her spoon, Chase's eyes widened, and Daniel stopped chewing his cake. Mom looked at the paper, then at me. Are you joking? Where did you get the money for this? I smiled, my gaze steady. I am the Regional Development Vice President at Ward & Cole. I live downtown, and the taxi I took tonight was so I didn't have to worry about parking my new Lexus I bought last week. Her face froze. No more smiling, no more sarcasm. Only shock. I stood up, gently took the box back and placed it in my bag. But you're right, if you think this gift isn't valuable enough, I'll give it to someone who truly deserves it. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking clearly across the silent room. Outside the restaurant, the summer breeze brushed through my hair. I took out my phone and sent one message to Aunt Margaret. The trip to Iceland is yours. I left Belrive behind in a heavy silence, walking away from the stunned stares of my mother and the family, who never really saw me as one of them. That night, I didn't go straight home. I stopped by Aunt Margaret's, where the lights were still on and a cup of hot tea was already waiting, as if she had known exactly how the evening would unfold. I told her everything, the way my mother belittled the gift before opening it, her shock when she saw its real value, and what I said before leaving. Aunt Margaret didn't laugh, but her eyes shimmered with pride. You did what most people never dare to, place your own worth above fake approval. I nodded, feeling lighter. I don't need her apology. I just need her silence. But silence didn't come the way I hoped. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Then a message arrived. Patricia, we need to talk. About last night. And about us. I didn't reply. An hour later, another call. This time from Daniel's number. I had forgotten he still used the same one. Then Kayla called. Chase sent a message. Mom is really upset. Maybe our little sister didn't need to go that far. Little sister. The phrase sounded so fake. I was never his sister, never treated like family. Yet now he used such a familiar tone, like the past never happened. That afternoon during a strategic meeting, my mother sent a long email titled in bold, "For the family." She claimed the party had been a misunderstanding, that I had overreacted, and that she wanted to start over if I truly wished to reconnect. But just a few lines later, the truth leaked out. She mentioned how Kayla really needs an internship at a reputable company to enhance her college applications, and how Chase has great business potential but needs guidance. Then, she added, if you know anyone hiring at your company, consider referring Chase. He has excellent leadership skills. I read the whole email without feeling anything, not anger, not sadness, just the sense that I was reading a shallow investment proposal, flowery language, but completely hollow. The next day, I blocked every number from my mother's family. I filtered their emails, I changed my social media privacy settings, and told our office security team that anyone with the last name Morrison should not be allowed in. Late that evening, Aunt Margaret called, her voice hesitant. Patricia, your mother came to my house this morning. I paused for a few seconds. What did she say? She wanted your address, said she had the right to see you, that a mother shouldn't be treated like a stranger by her own child. I told her she gave up that right a long time ago. I closed my eyes, imagining her standing on Aunt Margaret's porch, wearing her designer dress, makeup flawless, gripping her purse like she was bidding at an auction. Did she do anything outrageous? I asked. She did. She yelled in the street, accusing me of dividing the family, that I was selfish, and that everything she ever did was to help you succeed. I let out a quiet laugh. Succeed by locking me in an attic? I told her that. She went quiet for a while, then left, but Patricia, the look in her eyes, I think she's truly desperate this time. I didn't know what emotion I was feeling. Sadness? Pity? Or just the numbness of years of abandonment? But I knew one thing for sure. No amount of late tears could erase years of being forgotten. And coming back just for benefits could never be called love. That night, I sat alone on my sofa, gazing out at the city through my large window. I reopened the Iceland vacation email and updated the recipient's name. Margaret Lane. I added a small note. For the one woman who chose to stay, even when the world turned away. When I hit send, I wasn't just giving away a gift. I was closing a chapter of my life and stepping into the next one with my head held high. Margaret's trip to Iceland was scheduled for early September, right during the most breathtaking season of the Northern Lights. When I told her, she nearly dropped her glass. You're kidding, Patricia? Iceland? A 6-star resort? Oh my goodness, I've never even left this state. I smiled, laying the printed flight tickets and itinerary on the wooden kitchen table. No kidding. You deserve all the best things. And more. Aunt Margaret went quiet for a moment, then looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. One filled with unconditional love, pride, and deep gratitude. No fancy words, no tears. Just a warm squeeze of my hand, and it was enough. Since the night of my mother's birthday party, I had erased every trace of the past. Phone numbers, email addresses, even old belongings from the house. I had given them away or thrown them out. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't want to hold on to anything that reminded me of a place where I felt invisible. I focused on my work and on the relationships that truly mattered. I spent more time with Aunt Margaret, cooking together on weekends, taking morning walks around Lake Geneva every Sunday. Those seemingly simple things made me feel more loved than any empty words ever spoken by the woman who used to call herself my mother. A week before the trip, I scheduled a private car to pick Aunt Margaret up at the airport, hired a local guide so she could fully enjoy everything without worry, and even booked a full-body spa session at the hotel she'd be staying in, with a view that looked out to snow-covered mountains year-round. Aunt Margaret couldn't stop laughing as I listed the plans. You're turning me into royalty. I just smiled and said softly, I'm only giving back a small piece of what you gave me. During that time, I didn't receive any more messages or calls from my mother. Maybe she finally understood that this time I had truly closed the door. No more soft spots, no second chances. Her silence was the most valuable thing she had ever given me. The day before her departure, I gave Aunt Margaret a teal silk scarf, the color of the Northern Lights I had seen in pictures. She hugged me tightly, eyes glistening. Your father must be looking down and smiling. I nodded. I believed that, too. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights twinkling behind the glass window. I pulled out my old notebook, the one I started when I was just a girl banished to the attic, and read the first line I ever wrote. I will not be forgotten, not like this. Now, I added a new line below it. And I wasn't forgotten. I created my own place, right where I belong. I closed my eyes. I no longer felt heavy or bitter. Instead, I felt peace. Like I had finally taken off the weighty coat of the past. The next morning, I dropped Aunt Margaret off at the airport. She rolled her suitcase, the teal scarf wrapped around her neck, chattering about the weather in Reykjavik and whether she should eat breakfast on the plane or at the terminal. Before entering the security checkpoint, she looked back at me, her eyes gleaming like a child about to go to summer camp. You know, Patricia, I always hoped that one day you'd live up to your full potential, but I never imagined you'd be the one helping me live my own dream. I hugged her tightly. Because you were the first person who believed in me when no one else did. She walked away, her small figure gradually disappearing behind the line of passengers. I stood there for a while, then turned and walked out of the airport, my heart light. I didn't have a big, loud family or picture-perfect posts on social media, but I had one person who was always there for me, someone who chose me every single day, not for gain, not for appearances, but simply out of love. And sometimes just one person like that is enough to be called family. From a forgotten girl living quietly in an attic, I had risen and built a life I'm truly proud of. I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about those who choose to love and stand by you unconditionally. Success doesn't come from others' approval, but from daring to believe in your own worth. And sometimes, finding happiness means having the courage to let go of what once hurt you. What do you think about Patricia's story and her courageous choices? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartwarming and meaningful stories about family and life.